All right, we are now joined on the Soccer Hour, brought to you by your NorCal Honda dealers, by friend of the program, Jamie Watson, of course, of MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, as well as Fox, and he's everywhere. We can't get enough of this guy in any soccer capacity. J-Dub, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Ted, you are too kind. I love that introduction. And yes, I've been fortunate to be a lot of places, but this is one of my favorite places to be with you, talking the beautiful game, talking all things San Jose Earthquakes. And I think we've got a lot to talk about because it's been a busy, busy offseason for your Earthquakes.
It has, man. And I guess we'll start with Bruce Arena. You and I talked right about the time when that rumor was gaining steam, where it looked like he was going to be hired. And now that he is in, now that he is, the man in charge in San Jose, I guess what are your overall expectations knowing that this is the most decorated coach in American soccer history, but also he is stepping into arguably his most difficult situation. I mean, we can compare and contrast to being the head of DC at the start of the league and what he did there, and then the situation he stepped into previously at New England, which was bad, but not as bad as a season as the Earthquakes are coming off of. So what's your 30,000 foot view?
The 30,000 foot view, first of all, and this is an opinion I think that is shared by a lot of people in the soccer broadcaster world, is Bruce Arena was the perfect hire for the San Jose Earthquakes. And a few reasons, I'll tell you why. First and foremost, I can tell you that winning is contagious, but also losing is contagious. And Ted, this is coming from a guy who played for a team that went 5-22-5 in one season with Real Salt Lake, our expansion year. Brian Dunseth was the center back. We won't talk about the fact that he might have been responsible for one or two or a dozen of those 22 losses. We'll stick to the topic here and we'll say that I can tell you from experience that when we would show up to the stadium, midway through the season, I just basically expected that at some point the game was going to go badly and we were going to end up losing somehow. My mentality, even at 18, 19 years old, playing youth national teams, having a ton of success, almost like that, instantly with a few losses and just the inability for the team to get things right, that culture shifted negatively. And great group of guys, wonderful human beings, but things just went badly and just kept snowballing down the hill. That's what it felt like for the San Jose Earthquakes team in 2024. So, how do you fix that? You've got to get the locker room and the culture and the mentality right. And that's where I think Bruce Arena brings his X factor. You alluded to it a moment ago, most decorated coach in North American soccer. You don't get that way. You don't become the winningest coach in MLS history without being able to understand how to cultivate a locker room. And Bruce Arena's X factor is his ability to bring in good assistants. He's brought in some really talented coaches like Dave Sarachan, Aiden Brown, the goalkeeper coach, Shaw Reed Joseph, Steve Ralston, a legend in that area there. You've got this ability to have really good coaches around you that can help do the grassroots, the actual practices day in and day out. And Bruce Arena can manage the players, manage the locker room, manage the personalities. And once you do that, you can help shift that culture of losing and that contagiousness of losing
Mhm.
back into a culture of winning and back into the contagiousness of winning. And that's what I fully anticipate for the 2025 San Jose Earthquakes.
So tell me about culture from the player perspective, though, because that's a term that is thrown around a lot. Because last year, even though the team was bad, I still felt positive vibes from the guys, like you alluded to with Salt Lake, like great group of humans. I always feel like just because of some of the leadership guys that have been there in San Jose, whether it was a Wondolowski, whether it was a Shea Salinas, or even now a Christian Espinosa, that there was always positivity, that they weren't going to let it make them mopey and downtrodden. Because I think at the end of the day, you need to make sure it's still fun for everybody. And, there were smiles, even if the results weren't there and you could tell it was weighing on them. So, what is the definition of culture in your mind? And then what specifically needs fixing when you take a look at San Jose?
Yeah, culture is the buzzword in locker rooms in sports, isn't it? And how do you define it? And the first person that can do it, well, they'll be like the Billy Bean, right? They'll be sought after if you can figure out how to do it in a way that can build based off of culture or Moneyball, whichever one works. And look, I think when you talk about culture, it's about, can you be able to, MLS is a league of waves. Can you be able to Can you be able to ride the winning waves as long as possible and to shorten the waves of losing?
Mhm.
Are you able to come in the dog days of summer when you're doing Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday games? You maybe have dropped a result or two or three in a row, results that you maybe should have gotten. Maybe they're at home. And then you have the right leadership from the older players to understand when is it time to lay into guys and to yell and to who to yell at, right? Because some people can take it. I was a guy that you could yell at me and I would still show up the next morning and be happy and positive. The sun was out. It's a new day. There are some guys in the locker room, if you yelled at them, they would fold like a house of cards and they were just shut down. And you can't talk to players like that. It's understanding the different people, personalities, who connects with who. How can you then come in sometimes in the midst of a losing streak and say, we're going to actually just scrap practice today. We're going to go, I don't know, go karting or
Yeah.
something like that. We're gonna go play paintball together as a team. We're gonna do something that is fun to get this group back together and back as a unit. Because when you like the people that you're around, and I mean genuinely like you like everybody in the locker room, but when you have a culture of Ted, I really care about you. Well, if I'm on the field and you make a mistake and I really care about you, it's like, wait a minute, that's Ted. I gotta go cover for him.
Right.
It's not a second thought in your mind to go run 60 yards to cover for Ted and then to turn to you and be like, you got it. You got it. Next one, bro. It's good. All good, bro. I got you. And then you're sitting there going, all right, I got him now. And now all of a sudden it's layers on layers of how can you have each other's backs in these moments when become difficult. And those little margins, those are the things that sometimes are just the intangibles that you can't teach on a training ground. It's some of those things that you have to build, and it takes a little bit of time. So I would probably love to be in this preseason. Maybe out of any team in Major League Soccer, I mean, I'd like to be in preseason with Inter Miami and Messi. I think that would be cool. But close to it would be the San Jose Earthquakes because I think Bruce Arena is bringing in a lot of good players. They've
Mhm.
gotten rid of a lot of names that are really well known. But I think it's also about establishing a new identity and a new culture. And a lot of that is getting to know some of the players. And there's some big name players that have been brought in to buy in and help be able to say, no, 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 what happened in the past is the past. What's going to happen going forward is what our story is and what this chapter is with the new group combined with the regime that was there and the sort of core that was. And now you start to say we're going to build a new mindset for the 2025 San Jose Earthquakes, and I think Bruce Arena is the perfect person to be doing that.
When I look at some of the guys he's brought in, you've seen Mark Anthony Kaye, you've seen Nick Lima, you've seen Ian Harkes. But one that I really look at is Dave Romney. And it's not like he is a quote unquote star in Major League Soccer, but he has had success wherever he's been. And he's one of those guys who knows what it takes. And even just my few interactions with him, like he has that quality. And I'm not saying that the Earthquakes were lacking in leadership, but I think bringing a guy in like that Bruce Arena knows he can count on, that knows how to be a part of a communicative and high functioning back line is a big plus considering the San Jose Earthquakes conceded 78 goals last year, an MLS record. And that was a record that was previously held by, expansion teams. That wasn't supposed to be a regular team type record. That was an expansion team record for goals conceded. To me, a guy like Dave Romney has a huge impact, way more, maybe not way more, but just as much as acquisitions like Chicho Arango and Joseph Martinez.
You're absolutely right. And, when I said I love coming to talk to you about soccer, the fact that you point out Dave Romney amongst the whole host of really sexy names that have been brought in goes to show you know what you're talking about, Ted.
The
I got to
first
see
time.
Dave Romney up close. Yeah, no, not with me, pal. You can't fool me. You know what you're talking about. Look, I got to watch Dave Romney with Nashville SC, I believe from 2020 to 2022. I believe he was there before he made his way up to the New England Revolution. And, it was a partnership with Walker Zimmerman. So Walker Zimmerman got all of the credit. But I watched every game, every minute of those 3 seasons. First of all, Dave Romney, I think, played every minute of every game for 2 out of those 3 seasons, which is insanely
Yeah.
difficult to do. That sort of longevity, consistency, that health, you have to take care of yourself. Things have to go your way. Well, he consistently did for Dave Romney, and it wasn't by accident. But there were so many things that, the partnership of Romney and Zimmerman that Zimmerman got the credit for, and the call up to the national team and the trip to the World Cup, right? And all these things That doesn't happen if you don't have a partner like Dave Romney. And everybody wants to be Batman. Not everybody wants to be Robin. Dave Romney has as little of an ego as I've seen in professional sports because he was completely okay not getting any of the credit. And Walker got all of the credit. And look, Walker Zimmerman is an incredible player, but
Yeah.
Dave Romney is as well too. And so it's not a coincidence that one of the first moves that Bruce Arena made was to get Dave Romney on the team. One, because he is very, very good, and this team really needs a good center back, one that can organize, that can lead. He's deceptively quick. For somebody who is as big as he is, you may get the first step on him, but he's going to recover really fast. He's going to win everything in the air. He's really smart. He's going to cover for teammates. So I look to him as somebody that you might just put in pen his name as a center back for most of the games this year, and you can really count on it. And then you can go and worry about other positions and tinker elsewhere because he's going to be one of the foundational pieces. And what a smart move by Bruce Arena to go knowing the players in New England to go to Caleb Porter, who's a new coach who's going to want to change some things, who takes over at New England Revolution, and just make that call and just go, hey, Caleb, who would you get rid of over there? Oh, Dave Romney. Okay, yeah, we'll take him. What about Earl Edwards Jr.? Yeah, okay. Well, what about I don't know, maybe Ian Harkes? What about Nick Lima? What about well, Nick Lima came over on a free transfer, but Mark Anthony K. It's just so smart, man, to just go and raid the New England Revolution of players that the new coach doesn't see as a part of the project. And Bruce Arena can go over and say, this will be a continuation of a product that saw the New England Revolution go and set a points record for a regular season, what, 2, 3 seasons ago?
Yeah.
So smart. So smart for Bruce Arena.
And then people forget because when Arena was suspended, that they were also that season coming off the 72-point season. They were on pace for a 65-point season too. So there was the chance that they were going to have another, very highly successful season, which again points to, Bruce Arena knowing how to do this clearly. But let's talk about Arango and Martinez. Martinez, it seems like towards the end of the last year, he started looking like the guy that he was before the knee injury. His goals per 90 was really good. He was great in that playoff game against his old team in Atlanta. And then you have, Chicho Arango, who, after his own suspension with RSL last year, went down a little bit. It seemed like that had an effect on him. But obviously, he's an MVP caliber player in this league.
Before the All-Star break and the suspension you alluded to with Arango, and I don't know everything that went on with that, and I won't try to speculate on that because obviously it was sort of a tale of two halves of the season for him. He was on pace to be the Golden Boot leader in Major League Soccer. Was Christian Arango? I mean, this is a cold-blooded killer in the box. This guy just wants to score goals, and that's it. And keep in mind, I mean, it was a minuscule fee that was paid for him in general allocation money compared to the $6 million that Real Salt Lake went to spend to go get Arango to come back to Major League Soccer from Mexico. So you get a proven goal scorer in Arango who just maybe needed a change of scenery. And then once he starts scoring goals, that'll come back in waves like it did before. Joseph Martinez, yeah, who admittedly he wasn't quite the same after tearing his ACL, and he had a bad one. And by the way, weirdly enough, to tie back into Dave Romney, I was there that game when it happened. It was Nashville SC's first game of the 2020 season, and Dave Romney and Joseph Martinez were just running for a ball together, and nothing malicious, nothing really happened. I don't even know if they collided, but Joseph Martinez, somehow his knee got buckled on the turf at Nissan Stadium in Nashville, and he went down. And as somebody who's torn their knee on turf, I knew exactly in that moment. I was like, that looks like something you don't want to have happen as a
Yeah.
player. And Joseph Martinez just wasn't able to quite find that form since then. Now, can he still contribute? Absolutely. You saw that, and you saw him be able to catch form at the end of the season. So now all of a sudden you start to go, well, as a free player, why not take a chance on one of the most prolific goal scorers, scored over 100 goals in Major League Soccer, who's climbing his way to another guy who scored some goals in San Jose for a little while, chasing that name, and Chris Wondolowski, Earthquakes legend. But I mean, you know this better, right? You had Christian Espinosa last year playing up top, right? You had a Bobasi who has now left, and they let him walk, and it just needed something different. So I'll flip this back on you, Ted, because you know it. Did it ever really feel like last year with the way that Abobasi likes to drop back in and come and play, and you had Lopez on one side, Espinosa on the other, and Abobasi wanting to drop back in? Did it ever feel like to you that this team just needed a center forward who didn't actually care about coming back and playing soccer with everybody, that just needed to be a number nine that got on the end of it? Did it ever feel that way to you, that maybe that's what was lacking? Somebody who's just like, I actually don't care about passing in the midfield. I just want to get on the end of all of those passes that you guys put together. Did you ever get that feeling watching some of the games last year?
I did, and I think that it was the with Abobasi, he needed to be more physical, and I think that kind of got away from his game, and he wanted to be, like you alluded to, dropping back. And he's a very talented player and talented finisher, and in 2022 he had 17 goals, 2023 he had 10, but it just seemed like he was of two minds too often on the pitch. And then, not to be, over, hyperbolic, but you needed somebody who was going to be like a Alan Gordon or Steven Lenhart, who was just going to go bang around in the box,
Yep.
get in the tight, dirty spaces, fight for the ball, and put it on frame. And that wasn't what he was doing. And the tactics of what he was supposed to be doing, his responsibilities, I can't speak to that as clearly, but there were times where it's just like, we just need somebody to go in there and fight. To that point, that's what Arango does. You go watch some of his headers, you go watch some of his goals that come from inside the area. He's in between like three or four guys, but he goes and gets the ball. And he's not even specifically a target nine, but he'll still go and get the ball.
He's got that ability and almost that reckless abandon that I might collide heads if I stick my head in here. I might stick my head lower and the defender's going to try to clear it out. So I might get kicked in the face,
Right.
but I might score. And that outweighs everything in this guy's mind. I mean, look, I love scoring goals. I think Arango, I think he has to have goals to live, right? To really feel alive. Like this guy's got to be scoring goals. That's a quality I want my number nine to have. I want this guy to eat, breathe, sleep, only think about scoring goals. And that's Christian Arango in a nutshell. So, like you said, when there's a moment where you've got to scrape and fight and claw your way to get a goal, yeah, Arango will do it. Now he can score some beautiful goals as well too, but my goodness, man, a center forward that's willing to risk their own personal well-being at times to go score a goal and not think twice about it. You can't really teach that because I don't know. I wasn't necessarily that guy. I'm like, yeah, well, I might get cleared from a defender in the side of the face, so I'll just
Yeah.
get the next one. Arango's not that way. He's built differently.
Yeah, I don't blame you for not wanting to take a cleat to the face. That doesn't sound like the most fun way to spend your Saturday night. If
Right?
it leads to a goal, you feel justified, but it doesn't. You're like, what did I just get kicked in the face for? But so I got to pick your brain on scheduling differences this year. And obviously, we've seen the divide between teams playing in the Open Cup and teams playing in Leagues Cup. Where do you fall on this? Because I know there is a lot of contention. Some people want MLS all in, the Open Cup, which people forget that not too long ago that wasn't the case, and only in the last decade plus have all the teams been involved with it. But also Leagues Cup. I'm not going to play stupid here and tell you that, hey, the financial ability that's created by Leagues Cup and what's gone on between these two leagues and the packed houses compared to Open Cup, like, you can't ignore that. Like, I don't want to give up on history and tradition, but I also acknowledge that, nobody is the NFL. Like, everybody else still has to bring out the best business opportunities for their leagues.
I think it's a sensible and smart adaptation to the multitude of tournaments that MLS teams are now asked to play in.
Mhm.
It's impossible to expect every team to compete in every possible tournament and to be able to put out the best quality every single week. I think that I love the Open Cup. I know that. That is one of the tournaments that I've competed in, I've commentated on. I love this tournament. I think it's very difficult to navigate that because some teams have to prioritize the league. Some coaches have to prioritize the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Some teams and coaches want to prioritize Leagues Cup. Everybody has a different mentality. It's not linear in the thought process for every coach and for every team based on strength of your squad, depth of your squad, what your goals are, how the quickest line of achieving that can be to win a trophy. So you've seen that some coaches have not put as much emphasis on one tournament, more emphasis on another. And I think that's also a disservice because we can say every team's in every tournament mandatory. But if you don't get the buy-in from the clubs, fans are too smart nowadays. People who go and watch understand the difference of a full strength lineup, a mixed lineup, a lineup that has to have a little bit of balance to it because there's a very important game following that has maybe potential bigger outcomes and circumstances for the season that ebbs and flows,
Mhm.
right? Chasing the playoffs versus playing in the League's Cup and where you sit. If you're looking like you're out of the playoffs by that point in previous years, okay, maybe we need to go all in for the League's Cup here. And, there's several differences. And some teams feel as though they're ready to compete in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, so they really want to go for the League's Cup or they want to go for the Open Cup. Some feel as though they're not, so maybe it's not as important as making the playoffs because maybe that's where the hard line in the sand is from their general manager. So all of these things are to say, how do you get now 30 teams in alignment for this? I think Major League Soccer and Liga MX have done a really good job of being able to navigate the League's Cup, put the importance back into the Open Cup because that was maybe tested a little bit, and the fans spoke about how they really cared about the Open Cup. So the league said, okay, we're going to put more teams into it, have a better balance to it as well. And I think there's only a couple of teams that really will be tested with their depth because I think it's now a lot more manageable and you can
Right.
navigate those waters so much more now with this balance of some teams in some tournaments, some in both, some in just, a minimum of two, right? So I think that Major League Soccer, U.S. Soccer, the Canada Soccer Association, because they have the Canadian Championship.
Right.
I think they've gotten it right, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out. But I've been more optimistic now going into a season with fixture congestion
Mhm.
and the multitude of tournaments, more so this year than maybe any other year previously.
Well, I also look at it from the perspective of the Players Association, and for a lot of these guys, the amount of games. I mean, I know we've done the amount of counts of games that some of these European clubs players are doing, and they're acknowledging like, hey, this is too much, and we can put the data against the amount that you play in a calendar year versus the incidence of injury, and like I can't ignore that. Like everybody wants to see as many games as possible from a fan's perspective. That's how I've always viewed it, but I also try to be sympathetic to the player, which you understand. Like, you get tired. Like it's a lot of games, and I think you have to think about athlete safety as well. And I know that people are gonna say like, oh well, that's an apologetic take, but it's like it's true though. Like you can like a modern athlete, the care and effort that goes into their body is higher than it's ever been, but also the stress and demand on their body has never been like this before. I mean, the explosiveness, the stresses, just the way the game is played, and not just in soccer, but all sports. I mean, it's off the charts. Like the more you play, the more risk there potentially is. And if I'm an athlete, I'm like, hey, like we're talking about risk here. We need to make sure
Yeah.
this is the right thing to do for everybody.
I'll tell you this too, and I'll tell this quick story. We were fortunate enough for our 10-year anniversary. My wife and I, we got to go over to Europe, and we bounced around. We were able to see a couple different cities. Trip of a lifetime, amazing. And while we were there, we got a chance to go see Real Madrid play. Let me tell you, that was not easy getting tickets. Let's be grateful the way that we have the ability to
Connections.
get tickets here and whatnot, because over there it was not like that, right? So we
Yeah.
finally get a couple of tickets, but uh, put it in justification here. It's Sunday. They've just played, I believe, on Thursday. It's now Sunday. They're playing at home to Las Palmas, who are bottom of the table in La Liga, and I believe Wednesday. Yeah, I think it was Wednesday. They were playing in the Champions League against Salzburg. So I'm going to the stadium with my wife, and I'm like, hey, look, take in the Bernabeu. It's going to be amazing. They've just redone it. It's one of the best stadiums. Real Madrid has the most history to it, and kind of giving a little crash course, a little cliff note version of why this is significant. But I looked at it and I go, but the best player, Mbappe. Yeah, I probably don't expect to see him very long today, if at all. Jude Bellingham, probably not going to see him for very long today, too, because they're playing Las Palmas. They just played on Thursday. It's going to be Sunday. They have a Champions League game on Wednesday. So in my mind, I'm thinking this is 100% a game that you have to almost, if you're Carlo Ancelotti, I don't want to say punt, but like put other players out there.
Yeah.
because it doesn't make sense. And so when I see the lineup, I'm going, wait a minute, Rodrigo's playing, Mbappe's playing, Bellingham's playing. Like, why? This isn't the game that they need to be playing in amongst 60 some odd games they're going to play this year.
Yeah.
This one's not important. I go, okay, well, hey, let's just be fortunate. Palma scores, they go up. It was great. It was an incredible moment. They scored like 30 seconds in. Madrid hadn't even touched it. And then they Real Madrid just turn it on, right? Mbappe, he scores two, has a third that's actually called back. The score ends up being 4-1, but Madrid had three goals called back, rightly so by VAR and by the video assistant referee and video review and all that. So it was wild. But I kept being like, okay, well, it's halftime, 3-1. Probably not going to see Mbappe come out at halftime. Okay, it goes 4-1. Palmas gets a red card. I'm like, why have you not taken him off the field? He ends up
Yeah.
playing the whole game. And these are things to tell you, Ted. The reason I tell that whole story is uh, fans understand significance of games now. And as a fan watching that game, I'm sitting there thinking, why are you playing your best players up until and Mbappe played 90 minutes? I'm like, why? He's got to play again on Wednesday in the Champions League. And you just ran him around ragged against 10-man Palmas up 4-1 at home. Like, what are you doing? And but that's to say is it's unfortunate that fans are getting to that point because there's so many games that you have to almost say take the best player off the field. Whereas before you're like, don't take him off. I don't want to see a second of a game with Real Madrid without Kylian Mbappe. But
Well, let me ask you this though.
you understand that now.
How often did you not want to play as a player? Like, this is the other thing is, and I'm not saying people need to be protected from themselves, but didn't you always want to play? Were you ever like, no, coach, don't put me in? Like, players play. With
Yeah.
Wondolowski in every Open Cup game, it would be like, oh, is he, people ask me like, oh, is he going to start? I'd be like, of course. Like, he will not let go a game without being on the pitch. He will. It doesn't matter if it's a scrimmage, a friendly, whatever. He's like, he wants to be out there. He wants to play.
And all the discussions I've had from I just finished my 20th year in professional sports, both playing 12, commentating 8. No one's ever asked me this question. And I'm so glad you asked it because, yeah, I never wanted to miss a game. So I would almost ill-advised say I was okay to play if the coach ever asked me. I never wanted to come out. Now, even for Open Cup games in the early rounds when you were playing maybe an amateur team, you would see the lineup, and as a player that was maybe starting and playing and was an important role in the team, you'd go, okay, this is kind of a backhanded compliment that I'm not in the team. I've also been in the spot where I've played, and I've also been like, okay, this sucks because I realize I'm playing now with all of the B team and I see where I sit and maybe even the C team, and I've been on both sides of it. Even when you understand where you fit in the scheme of things as a player, even when I was in that, valued spot of, hey, we're not playing the starters today. Hell yeah, I wanted to play. I was still like, this sucks watching. I don't want to watch this. Like, you feel this disconnect. You feel like, well, I'm in the stands, even though I'm healthy watching this game. I hate this. I don't want to do it. So it's not the players the, that are saying, I want to stop playing. You're not a professional soccer player, Ted. You don't get to this point if you're like, yeah, I want to manage my workload.
Right.
Players don't think that way. Sports scientists and coaches have to think that to keep you from getting in trouble. And that's why they're in the professional level because they have enough rationale to think that way. But you're right. No player ever wants to come out of a game, wants to take a game off. You just don't. The players that do want to do that, they're not playing in the top levels.
As a final one, because I've taken so much of your time, what do we expect from San Diego this year? Because the only teams that have had relatively immediate and sustained success as an expansion team, really were Atlanta and LAFC. The other teams, whether we're talking about Nashville, whether we're talking about Minnesota, Cincinnati, Austin, St. Louis. I know I'm leaving a couple off, but there were blips on the radar, and it took FC a little bit of time. But it does take time. But right now with San Diego, they've landed some big names. However, if there was a clear path to success in year number 1 for an expansion team, I think we'd see everybody do it. Now, even with LAFC and Atlanta, I tend to point to look at who their coaches were as much as the money they spent, like guys who understand how to win.
Yeah, I think that the ceiling for San Diego in their expansion season is probably the 2020 Nashville SC season where they made the playoffs.
Mhm.
And that's a big deal to do in year one. I think if San Diego can achieve that, they should go, wow, this was great, and we should be very happy with that. I think the reality for San Diego fans is they should enjoy the process of being in Major League Soccer and the growing pains that come with a roster that's going to evolve each window as the club starts to proceed. The floor is not the 5-22-5 season I alluded to when we first started talking here today with Real Salt Lake in 2005. They won't be that bad. I think that if they are a team that can be competitive, win their games at home, put themselves to where they get to, let's say, September, and they're still in the playoff hunt, I think you can quantify that as a good season. I mean, legitimately in the playoff hunt, not mathematically in the playoff hunt, still fighting for it. I think that, you look at the expectations, and as a fan, I think they should be limited so you can, expect less, over deliver, right? And to be surprised. I wouldn't have lofty expectations, but if they can replicate what Nashville did in 2020 and make it into the playoffs, if I'm a San Diego fan, I would take that right now. But I just think that it's going to take a little bit of time for that roster to continue to evolve, and it's going to be a tough task being in the Western Conference with a lot of those teams. But win your home games, you give yourself a chance, right? So that's going to be the goal, is to make sure that they can make their home a fortress, and the fans sure look like they're set to do it. So there's another Cali team for Earthquake fans to root against, and well, I don't know, have to come up with some sort of nickname
Right.
for those battles, right? So Ted, I'll put you in charge of that one because you're the clever one of us two.
I'll see what I can do. Right now, the only one I've heard is Cali Cup, and I'm like, it's so simple, it works. But I'm sure there's something like the I-5 battle or something like that, something that involves a freeway. They like to use something like that. But we'll keep
Right?
thinking on. I'll bounce some ideas off you. I'll be
We'll
peppering with
workshop
you
it.
next when I forget that you're in a different time zone. You'd be like 1 a.m. You'd be like, what the hell?
But it's you, so I'll answer it. So yeah, that's right. That's about the next time we'll chat, I'm sure.
Right on, Mr. Watson. Well, I appreciate your time. We'll talk soon. All right.
Ted, you're one of the best in the business. Thank you so much to the NorCal Honda dealers for having us here for the soccer hour. Appreciate you guys.